Welcome to the Culinary Treasure Podcast. Steven Shomler, your host. So delighted to be here in Maine. Actually, I learned something today. I'm on Deer Isle, which is an island, but I'm also this morning, sitting in Deer Isle town. 44 North Coffee. Melissa Raftery, thank you so much. It's such a delight to be here.
Thanks, Steve. It's awesome to chat with you.
And by the way, if you want to see all of the Culinary Treasure Network's Maine-centric content, be it podcasts, travel shows, travel articles, food articles, craft beer podcasts, just go to adventuresonthemaincoast.com. So we're going to talk about 44 North Coffee, your journey, which is pretty amazing, but stories I ask everyone, all my guests on my podcast, where were you born?
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, Cincinnati is a town near and dear to my heart. I visited once there with my son, Zach, had a magical weekend. You often, when people come from, they don't see a place as cool as I did, but I could live in Cincinnati. I like it. The internet speed's bad there.
Yeah.
But everything else, it was amazing. I had a great time. And then where'd you go to high school?
I actually went to high school at Purcell Marion, which was a Catholic school, is a Catholic school, East Walnut Hills, close to downtown. And I loved it.
And what's the mascot there?
The Cavalier.
The Cavalier. Not Cavaliers, but Cavalier.
Purcell Marion. Cavaliers.
Cavaliers.
With an S, yeah.
With an S, okay.
Thank you.
And then, so your Maine journey, I like to ask someone, so we're in Deer Isle, so when did you move to Deer Isle? And for you, that happened in 2004, but it's actually more important, when did you move to Maine? So talk to me about what brought you to Maine in 2002.
What brought me to Maine was I went rafting off a 40-foot waterfall in New Zealand. And this was when I was in college studying abroad. And from that moment, when I saw the way the river guides interacted, and as a team, I realized that that was the job I wanted. So I went home and we had Google at that time. So I did Google where I could train as a whitewater guide. And Maine is one of the most respected states because we have a whole state certifying whitewater guide license that you get here. And so I moved to Maine in 2002 to a small town called The Forks.
So I've done some whitewater rafting, Wenatchee River in central Washington. Absolutely love it. I think we did, and I'm talking things I don't know about, but 3 and 4 level rapids. Is that? I mean, it was amazing and intense. We had self-bailing rafts, and we went the whole thing seemed to go under in the front, but then we came out of it.
Oh yeah,
it's exhilarating.
I'm so glad you've gone rafting before.
Oh yeah, I've got some pictures. The whole front of the raft is underwater. They set up cameras and take pictures, and I cherish that. I love it. So Forks, is that right?
The Forks, yes. It's actually they named the town after the confluence of the Kennebec and the Dead River.
And where's that roughly from here?
It's about, it would be northwest from here, about 3 hours away, and it's really only about 30 more minutes until you're in Canada. So the Forks, I believe, is a population, the last update I saw on the sign was about 380 people year-round, but it's worth a visit, for sure.
Yeah, I may have to do some, and there's good rafting across the state. This is, obviously, I should have occurred to this, but never occurred to me. There's good rafting in Maine.
Yeah, there's wonderful rafting in Maine. There's the two rivers I mentioned, the Kennebec and the Dead, and then also the Penobscot River, which kind of wraps around Baxter State Park, which many people have heard of because it's often the end of the Appalachian Trail hike for folks.
All right. So my goal is to come back here regularly for the next few years. And so I'm going to have to make a rafting trip. That would be phenomenal. Oh,
absolutely.
I love that. Okay. So then as I understand the journey, the shorthand version, as often with many of us, you fell in love with someone and that was what brought you to Deer Isle from the Forks, right?
Forks,
Because there's a place in Washington called Forks, Washington, out on the Olympic Peninsula. So I'm just kind of making sure I don't say Forks as opposed to the Forks.
Yeah.
And that brought you to Deer Isle in 2004.
Yeah.
And then sadly, as sometimes happens, that relationship, that chapter came to an end.
It did eventually, yes.
Yep. But still, great guy and everything.
Great guy.
Yep. But just that's what happens sometimes. And that's why I teach people to enjoy the chapter you're in. Right. Because all chapters sadly come to an end. So love the one you're in. So 2007, your 44 North coffee journey in my head really began. Tell me if I have this right. You went to work at a facility where you're packaging and shipping stuff off.
Yes.
Yep.
Outdoor camping products.
Outdoor camping products. So you're in a little cold building here in Deer Isle town, right? Yep. The same town we're in now. And I'm so fascinated. There's a town and the Isle. I like that. But you're shipping stuff off. And the person that is also an employee of that company that becomes your friend and future business partner is Megan.
Yeah. Yep. Megan Wood. Megan grew up on Deer Isle and was, is very a personality that will grab many people, anyone who's cool, pretty much wonderful, open-hearted woman who's smart. And we had a lot of fun packaging outdoor camping products in a freezing cold warehouse.
Now, did you ever grow up riding in the front seat of the car and calling shotgun?
Yes.
Okay, so next time I come back, I'm calling shotgun to doing a podcast with Megan to get her side of the story and her North coffee journey.
Absolutely.
But so the two of you are working together in a cold office, packaging, shipping, but then you're also going and doing trade shows.
Yes. Yep.
And when you travel with someone, you know whether or not it's a good fit or not, as far as a friendship, a business partnership, whatever.
Absolutely.
And then it's a whole nother level to travel, but then to travel and work.
Yes.
And so the two of you must have really hit it off.
We did. We absolutely did. And I think that what ended up happening is when we were in this freezing cold warehouse, we loved coffee and we would order coffee from different roasters all over the US to keep our hands warm and to also enjoy. And so what started was, each of us taking a turn. The third wave of coffee, kind of that like Starbucks.
Blue bottle.
Yes. So like Starbucks was definitely very helpful in putting coffee in the language of people who, additives to drinks and flavored foam and all kinds of stuff. The third wave was when we, I feel like we took it down to a more homegrown kind of local level. And a shop that back then was probably much smaller was Blue Bottle Coffee.
Yeah.
And that's where we began to, we would order, once a month from there, once a month from Stumptown. Any kind of West Coast roaster seemed to be what attracted us. And we began a journal to talk about tasting notes and flavor. We talked about the packaging that the coffee came in, certain people's logos, what they wrote on their bags. Roast levels, what we preferred, and it just kind of all erupted.
So it's kind of like, it sounds like it started out kind of like as a maybe a hobby or a fun thing to do that grew into a passion. And if I'm hearing right, sooner than later, now you're saying we should have a coffee business of our own somehow, some way.
Yeah.
And so you're not just writing down coffee notes and design notes and roasting notes for fun, although nothing wrong with that, but you also have an eye toward how will our business be like this? We may not know what our business will be, but we're taking notes with an eye toward our future business that we might have together.
Yes, absolutely. And the nearest roaster was in Ellsworth, so about 45 minutes away. And we thought, you know what, we could be the next one who popped up at farmers markets. And that was our primary mission, was to sell at multiple farmers markets in the beginning and eventually have a retail shop.
So you opened your first space, if I have this right, in the C-Mart building.
Yes.
Only locals will know what that is or care, but the C-Mart building, it was an upstairs space.
Yep.
Which we'll talk about because that brings challenges, in 2010.
Yes.
Right? And it was both a place where you roasted beans and did some retail sales. But now I want to go back in time to roughly 2009. You did two things to prep to open your business that kind of, I think, well, one of them is brilliant and genius, and people aren't smart enough to do it, but not necessarily in this order, but you did A and B. So I'll start with A. You went around to some coffee roasters to see if you could pick their brain.
Yes. I don't know where we got that piece of advice, but it just felt natural to send a few emails out, see who responded, and if they would sit down with us to tell us challenges, joys, and struggles about entering the coffee industry. The first person we sat down with was Bob Garver, who is an owner of Wicked Joe Coffee in Brunswick, Maine.
I love that name, Wicked Joe.
Wicked Joe.
Very, very New England.
Yes. Yeah. And Bob's actually a Californian, but
Well, we won't hold that against him.
Yeah.
Everywhere I've been, we don't like Californians. I grew up in California, just so we're clear.
Fair enough. Bob sat down with us for 5 hours, which
What generosity.
massive generosity. And as a business owner now, 10 years in, knowing how busy the days are, how many different directions you have to fly, I consider his generosity of that time something that we also have to pay forward. And if we ever have the honor for someone who comes to ask information from us, we will always think of Bob and what he gave us in that beginning of the journey.
That's just a precious gift because he's giving you his wisdom and his time.
Yes.
Hard fought for wisdom.
Exactly. Another person we sat down with was Charlie Fishbein, who owns the Coffee Exchange in Providence, Rhode Island. And Charlie is the man of Providence. The cafe buzzes from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. I've never seen an empty chair in that cafe. And Charlie was a unique person for us to sit down with because he is a member of an organization called Cooperative Coffee, which 44 North is also now a member of. It was 8 years in the making. But Charlie gave us his wisdom about ethical buying practices and told us why being part of Cooperative Coffee was his greatest asset of his business. And he generously offered for us to piggyback on his coffee orders as a way for us to get started. So essentially, he would buy his green coffee, the raw bean, from New Jersey, have it shipped up. He would unpack his pallet and then pack us a new one and send it off to Maine for us. There was also a period of time where we drove down our personal vehicles and would load 4 bags at a time into our cars.
That's what entrepreneurs do in the startup phase.
Yes. we did that probably too many times, but
and then hold the mic up a little closer to here.
yes.
So Charlie Fishbein, he meets you and he says, "Hey, I can help you get beans up to Maine."
Yep.
Because sourcing, if you're not in the coffee business, you may not understand. In order to roast beans, you got to get beans, and you don't just go to the market to get your green beans. You got to come from somewhere, and it's not always easy to get.
Right.
So he gave you just an incredible gift as well.
Yes. Charlie really opened his, when I think about anyone who adds extra labor to their day on our behalf of 2 young women who just had this kind of dream. Charlie added hours of labor for us that really, in the long run, Cooperative Coffee is exactly the type of relationship that we were aiming for.
Well, I just want to, Charlie, I've never met you, but I love, I battled for my dream and I live, I teach people, go live the life you imagine. I own that, go live the life you imagine.com.
Yeah.
But it's a riff on Henry David Thoreau. And I live the life that I imagined, and I help people battle for their dream now. And so for Charlie to help you guys battle for your dream,
Yes.
what a gift. So incredible. And one of those 2 guys, I can't remember, one of them gave you a great quote.
That would be Bob. Bob said the thing that lasted with me about our whole 5-hour conversation was coffee is a joyful industry. And he's right. To this day, whether it's someone who's coming in for like their weekly bag of beans or their cup, that exchange is joyful. It's like often like a quick, reprieve in between, a job or an errand, and people smile around coffee. Just what happens.
So speaking of Henry David Thoreau, one of his quotes that it's sad to me, but I love is, I'm paraphrasing, but people live lives of quiet desperation. And that's a heartache to me. And particularly in the professional side of their lives, so many people live a work life that is absent fulfillment. Mm. And to be able to work in a joyful industry, everything about you says that you have fulfillment professionally, which so many people tragically don't.
Thank you. I feel that way. And I am very, very grateful for all the people on our team, for Megan especially, that we were able to, kind of charter this course on this island that doesn't have a lot of jobs. And if you aren't working in the school or on a back of a lobster boat, or as a server, a waitress, it's tricky to make it all work. So the fact that Megan was willing to, dive into this just as ignorant as I was, um, it says a lot.
Yeah, having a good business partner is partnerships don't work. I tell people all the time, don't do them. But when they do, they're magical. I can't wait for the day that I get to meet Megan and tell her side of the story. So 2009 roughly, so you opened in 2010, but 2009 roughly, you have these conversations, 5 different roasters. But then the other thing you do is you borrow, beg, and steal some money,
Yeah.
and you have a perilous adventure-filled trip to New Jersey. And what do you go to New Jersey to pick up?
We bought a used Diedrich IR3 kilo roaster. So that in reference is it produces 6.3 pounds of coffee, roast 6.3 pounds of coffee per batch. And each batch takes about 15-ish minutes.
And so when I buy a 1 pound bag, you're getting like 6 bags.
Yeah.
And that's you have to like keep that thing going if you're doing any kind of production at all.
Yes, absolutely.
But so in spite of that, which sounds like that's not very much, for people to understand the scale, startup, new business, probably not a gazillion resources at your disposal when you started. That's like an $8,000 or $10,000 piece of equipment back then, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think it cost us right around $8,000. And it fortunately came with some scoops and some scales, like your starter kit, And
This is in a basement in New Jersey.
Yes.
So you didn't just like lift it up and put it on your back.
No. It was, we had tons of fear about knowing how to reassemble this machine. So we asked the guy who we bought it from if he would allow us to take a video of it being, a demo roast for one, and then deconstructed so that when we brought it back home, we would know how to put it together again.
So he did a demo roast, roasted some beans. You got to watch and video it.
Yep.
Then he took it all apart so you could take it out of the basement into your vehicle to drive it home. And you videoed that so then you could bootstrap it back together.
Exactly. And when the day we moved it into the C-Mark building, I think it was a lot lighter than our current roaster, but it was like 400 pounds. So we have a picture of C-Mark building has about 22 steps, and they're all very steep. So it was a mission to get it up there, and then it lived there for about three years until we realized that we had fully outgrown that baby roaster and we needed to move into a larger size.
Okay, we'll get to that other size, but still taking the little parts of a 400-pound roaster that you don't really, because you never put one together before, up 21 steps to second story and putting it back together. That's what entrepreneurs do, because that's something I don't want to do, but what a magical thing to get that. How did it feel when it got put back together and it actually worked? The beans are roasting.
It felt brilliant. I wouldn't say that the beans were tasty in the beginning, but the fact that we had a machine that was turning on a little bike chain and had heat applied to it was wonderful.
And a lot of people don't know I have been blessed to have some experience with roasters and roasteries and watching it happen. And the oils, coffee beans have oils. And if you're not careful, the oils will catch fire and you'll have a fire inside your roaster.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you spent about 2 months. It's up. It's ready to go. We're still in 2009 roughly. And you spent about 2 months figuring this thing out, getting it dialed in. How are we going to roast beans?
Yep. Yes. So Megan and I, when we roasted coffee, we did it as a 2-person job. So one person was making the adjustments on the machine to the heat and the airflow. The other person was recording time and temp on a whiteboard. I mean, it was insanely time consuming. And I'm glad this happened, but probably like about maybe, 6 months in, we had a fire in our roaster. Thing Megan and I did, when coffee is roasting, it has a very thin skin called the parchment that essentially turns like lightly brown and flies off. And in our roaster, we had a gap in between the drum and the wall. And so that thin skin, with the silver skin, would fall down and collect. And it got too close to the propane burner and essentially set itself on fire. So what Megan and I did was vacuum it up. We sucked it out of the machine to get it away from the drum. But in the end, we caught the vacuum on fire. So this was an experience that happened in the fall. We caught the vacuum on fire. The vacuum's now burning. We decided to throw the vacuum out the window which
I shouldn't be laughing, but this is
which ended up in a pile of leaves, which then these dry leaves caught on fire. So we had like the initial catastrophic roaster's lesson is do not vacuum up fires, spritz them with water instead, and then never suck hot fire into a vacuum.
and don't throw burning vacuums into piles of leaves.
Yes, exactly.
But you get it nailed eventually. And tell me about the first bag of beans that you sold.
The first bag of coffee we saw, I believe, might have been a bean from East Timor. That was a coffee that we had for 1 year and never again, sadly. But it was to an amazing man named Nelson Monteith, who was our local school's theater director. And that sale occurred on December 3rd, 2010. We first, I guess, call ourselves in business.
How did that feel? Someone finally bought your coffee.
Felt amazing. We saved that $10 bill.
So I've got tears in my eyes because those kind of stories here. I remember the first time I held the first book I ever wrote.
Yes.
And it was like, so I get that. What an incredible journey. So 2010, eventually, you have some cool stuff happen where you moved. Let's see if I have this right. Your next location opened in 2015. We'll get to that, but I want to go back to the C-Mart building, 21 steps to the second story.
Yes.
You're roasting coffee there. You are selling retail coffee there. You're selling beans there, coffee that people can drink, hot liquid as an addition to beans. But now coffee comes in big bags.
60 and 70 kilo bags, which is 132 pounds and 154 pounds.
And those are green coffee beans that you have to throw in the roaster.
Yep.
Which means you have to get them up the 22 flights of 22 steps.
Yes. Exactly.
What a nightmare.
It's a super nightmare. It became, well, I'll say, this is maybe obvious to the listener, but Deer Isle is a summer destination. So tourist town, second homeowner. So it's, a height of our season is 3 months. And when we're ordering a pallet every week, that means we're carrying like 1,400 pounds of beans up those steps every week, 10 bags. And so we tried to pay people. We tried to give the kids across the street who are in college beer for carrying them. Nothing lasted.
Well, they did it once, though, right?
They did it once.
And they're like, never again. Not enough beer to make us do that insanity.
No way.
So you MacGyvered tell us what you MacGyvered to make it work.
So eventually, I think probably 4 years in, we asked our amazing landlords if we could cut a hole in the floor to build a trap door. And we rigged this sliding cross beam from the ceiling of our retail space. And on it was a chain and a mechanical winch that we would lower down through the hole that we cut in the floor to the ground where we had a fishnet that we actually had gotten free from the dump. We would set the bag of coffee, 150 pounds, on top of the fishnet. We'd wrap the fishnet up and cinch it with a carabiner and then hoist it through the floor. Yeah.
That's the ingenuity of entrepreneurs right there.
Or insanity.
Lockhorn Cider in Bozeman, Montana, has their cider facility on the second story, and they put in this incredible elevator, that they built, outside elevator to get the apples up to the second story.
Love that.
And so your story kind of reminds me of theirs. So eventually it's time to leave the C-Mart building, but before you do, roughly in summer of 2015, if I have my story straight, you opened down at the far end of the island in Stonington, and that's on 70 Main Street.
Yeah.
So I stopped there this morning for a cup of coffee. I had an amazing apple Pop-Tart delight. That's where the ferry comes in, if you're going to take the ferry to Isle of Ho. So you opened there in 2015, and that was and is summer, so roughly May to October.
Yep.
And part of the reason that building, if I understand correctly, has no heat.
Yes.
So you kind of can't be open when it's 0 degrees.
Yes.
So that's your summer location. So that was a big step to have a second location.
Absolutely. It felt like it actually was the building itself that called to us. If just to describe the building for folks, it was probably like a 1890 building that has massive gallery style windows, 2 stories as well. but just a very, very enticing, and it's the end of the street. So it logically just made sense. Like there needs to be a coffee shop here, where are the gathering spaces? And Stonington is a working waterfront. So we didn't want it to be a coffee shop just for tourists. We were very hopeful that it would also be for fishermen when they came in from Hall. They could come get like a warm cup, and that's what's turned out happening. It's like a whole mixed crew of people who support the shop, and it's awesome to see the conversations that happen while standing in line.
I love that. Okay, tell me again about your District IR 13. So what's the name of the roaster you had, the first one?
Well, her name is Marlena.
Oh, I name my vehicles.
Yes.
So you named the roaster Marlena. So tell me Marlena's identity again.
So Marlena is it's a German design, but manufactured in Sandpoint, Idaho. So a company called Diedrich. And it is IR 12 kilo. So it roasts about 22 pounds.
No, but the first one.
The first roaster?
Yeah.
A Diedrich IR3.
Diedrich IR3. And did that roaster get a name?
It didn't.
It didn't. Okay. And so that one weighed 400 pounds, roughly.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the way, and it's, if I remember correctly, 7.3 pounds per roast.
Yep. 6.3.
6.3 pounds per roast. And so at some point, that one goes away, and you bring in Marlena. And that's, tell me again, the Diedrich.
IR 12 kilo.
IR 12 kilo.
Yes.
And she weighs 1,000 pounds.
Yes.
How do you get her upstairs to the second story in the C-Mart building, those 22 steps?
So our back to our landlords, the Bulgers, Holly, Mead, and Bruce Bulger, they let us cut a hole in the wall of the second story so we could use a crane. Bruce was like, oh, I wanted like a sliding glass door there anyway. Let's just cut a hole in the building.
So you had a crane lift Marlena up into the second story.
Yeah.
And so you could roast more beans per cycle.
It increasing our roaster size and capacity basically is what allowed us to be where we are today. We couldn't have done it with the small one.
Yeah, and you were able to increase retail production, move into wholesale, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then in 2017, roughly, summer 2000, you opened the building we're sitting in right now.
Yeah.
So the one in Stonington is 70 Main Street. So I had coffee there this morning. And then I drove to 7 Main Street, about 10 minutes away. And I'm like, where am I going? But it was fun to go from 44 North to 44 North, put it on my Instagram story. But we're in the town of Deer Isle.
Correct.
Or Deer Isle Town. And that's this building here. And then you moved Marlena again from there to here. And this is both a roasting facility and a retail space.
Yes. Yes. So we got the crane again. And the roaster was slid into a first floor location, which has been a beautiful thing for bodies and backs and health.
Yeah, so not to have to, and what was it like that last time you went down those 22 steps?
I miss them, to be real honest. I was like the Stairmaster I needed. No, it felt to have a new space that was easier for older folks to also get into, or people with disabilities. I think that this was a very good move.
And so this space is open retail year round, even in the dead of winter.
Yes.
Yeah, and I one of the things I've said for years, I someday want to take a travel trip to Maine, like in January.
Absolutely.
Because I lived in Minnesota for 3 years. I know how beautiful videography and photography is with snow, and I'm okay to -6.
Yep. Okay, you're good here then.
Yeah, I mean, it gets lower than -6. I'm cold no matter what, but I'm good to -6. And one day I thought I shouldn't know this information. But if you ever go to the Oregon coast, don't go in January. Like a lot of places are just shut down and they go to South America and hang out. But February, a lot of places, in February, some places open back up. And if you go there, the places that you get to, they're so thrilled to have you. And it's desolate and it's amazing. And I'm pretty sure that there's some kind of rhythm that I can find, Maine mid-coast and from here north, where I could have just an incredible experience. There may be only 2 places to stay, but I'll find places to eat. I'll have an incredible experience. And I'll have to stop by here and have some coffee in the dead of winter.
Well, I will see you in January because you are spot on with that. Once people get a chance to rest in the fall, it's so wonderful to see the few that trickle in that you don't know who their grandma is or who their neighbor is. It's really great to have tourists in the winter.
Yeah, and why the heck are you here? But the photography, I'm sure, is stunning. I mean, it's already stunning.
Yeah.
I mean, the pictures I've taken, I take way too many photos. It is just to give a plug, if you've not been to Maine, you got to come to Maine, and then you've got to come to Deer Isle and stay here. I feel like it feels like kind of like I could just pick up the island and put it in any kind of rural part of America where there's farmland. So it kind of doesn't feel like a tourist destination. It is.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm getting like part of real Maine.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it feels like. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what it feels like. I'm getting a sense of, well, this is what it's really like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the whole fishing industry is Stonington actually is the largest lobster port in the entire state of Maine. So I think about 80% of lobsters that are Maine lobsters come from 10 minutes down the road. So yeah, that whole kind of, you can't avoid being part of witnessing that, like the working waterfront and the folks who are participants in that.
So from 2017 forward, you have 2 locations, a summer one and a year-round one.
Yes.
So the next step in the journey is you've got a roasting facility a few blocks away, roughly, that's going to open, next year, roughly. Yeah. And that'll just be roasting and business. We'll give you more retail space here.
Yep.
So that's another expansion. So that'll be, then you'll have three locations, but one won't be for retail, just for roasting and wholesale and to do business.
Yes. Yep. And we are going to be adding a Marlena 2.
So you'll roast here and you'll roast up a few blocks away.
We're actually all of our roasting and production will be done at 56 Church Street, which is the new location, but we're buying a second roaster.
So they'll just be side by side?
Side by side, yep.
So you'll do even more roasting of beans?
Yes, that is our goal. And I don't know that both roasters will run year round, but our goal is to, we have an incredible woman who is roasting for us right now, Alex. And Alex is up for the task to run both roasters at once. Well,
so roasters, the person that actually runs that machine,
yes,
they're usually quirky and weird, not unlike a really good brewer. The founding brewer, who may or may not have still brewed to this day, is different than the brewer on the line. And so maybe next time I should also do a podcast with Alex.
I think so.
I think that'd be fun. Okay, so one of the things that's been a secret to your success, but really, really meaningful to you, I think I have the name right, is cooperative coffee.
Yes.
So talk to me about that.
Cooperative coffee began, I want to say, in 1984. To fact check that. Cooperative coffee began with Bill Harris, who happened to own a cafe in Americus, Georgia. Bill also was associated with Habitat for Humanity and was on a trip down in Guatemala. And at that time in the 80s, he realized that he was meeting a lot of coffee farmers who were producing good volumes of coffee but had no one to sell it to.
And growing coffee is really hard work.
Yes.
And a lot of those farmers, forgive me, but this is my understanding. I did a podcast with Portland Coffee Roasters, incredible. A lot of farmers are taken advantage of.
Yes.
You do all the work, we'll give you pittance for your stuff, and then we'll make a lot of money off of your hard labor.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And coffee is it involves a time scale as far as like if the product can over ferment or go, in theory it needs to be moved to a processing facility in a certain amount of time. So Bill got friendly with some coffee farmers. They communicated that they did not have a market to sell to. And Bill, owning a cafe, went back to Georgia and thought, okay, I know some people in coffee. If I can find 7 roasters, 6 or 7, who will each give me $7,000, we'll fly to Guatemala, we'll buy a container of coffee. And Bill did this. People thought they were literally writing checks to these people, not even knowing them, and thought they would never see any coffee show up again. But Bill went back. Everyone fulfilled their promise, and there began a relationship that is still happening. And Cooperative Coffee started with 7 roaster members and has now grown to 23. And we are one of them.
But you started out not being a member, but aspiring to become a member.
Yes. Yes. It was the buying model spoke to us.
Because you're actually making a difference for the farmers.
Well, it's relationship, right?
Yep.
So there's there are, I think, the idea that someone would create a relationship and leave and exit it in 1 year didn't seem like a very fair way to conduct business. The majority of the coffee producers that we've worked with 10 years or more. So that was appealing to us. Transparency was also appealing to us. Price, naming a price and being transparent about it. And then environmental initiatives, which 3 cents per pound of every pound of coffee we buy goes back into a fund called the Impact Fund, which is very apparent, is more important than ever, where coffee producers can apply for grants and projects can be funded where climate change, which is going to affect coffee growing regions and already has the most, the ability to tackle some of things like leaf rust or massive rains and hurricanes. These projects are funded by our buying per pound.
And so you for a while you spent a little bit more to buy from Cooperative Coffee until you saved your pennies and were able to pay the fee to join and become an official member, one of the 23 roasters.
Yes.
And then so not only do you get the privilege of being part of it, but you get the responsibility of if they put you on committees and they work you to help do greater good. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah. As a member owner, your voice is requested and important. And so the committees that we are on involve the Environmental Impact Committee, the Quality and Sourcing Committee, and then once a year we have what's called the AGM, and all 23 members and also some of the coffee producer co-ops, we gather and we choose a city or a roaster. We haven't met, unfortunately, because of COVID for 2 years, but the last AGM was in Gainesville, Florida, at a roaster that Sweetwater that was hosting us, and it's an incredible time where if you have a question, an idea, marked, you want to just talk about progress and challenges, that's where it happens.
That's amazing. So you also get the benefit of rubbing shoulders with other coffee entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and the number of times that we have picked up the phone when our roaster was down and broken and been able to instantly call 5 different people who are members of Cooperative Coffee to get advice or how to fix something. It's this rich wealth of a relationship.
So you love coffee.
I do.
So tell me where your coffee journey began. I suspect it ties back into your childhood.
Yes. I think I probably had my first drank the whole kind of cup when I was 14 years old. And my parents did a very different brewing method. I don't know. It's trending now for hipsters, but I don't know why they ever learned about it.
Were hipper than your teenage self ever could have imagined.
I guess so. My parents brewed toddy, which is this it's a company out of Colorado, but they make these plastic carafes that you fill up with a 12-ounce bag of coffee that's coarsely ground. You have a microfiber filter that goes inside the bottom. You pour cold water over all the coffee grounds. You let it sit for 14 to 16 hours overnight, and then you drip it. And it's essentially cold brew concentrate.
And can you hear this drip as it's dripping?
Yeah. I would wake up, it would be dripping on the countertop. And then my parents, you put it in the fridge. So every morning what they do is they pull it out and they would microwave half cold brew and half water. And I'd hear the beep go off after 3 minutes. And that's how my parents drank their coffee.
So you had some smells.
Yep.
Some sights, and then some sounds. The sounds of the drip, the sounds of the microwave and the beep.
Yeah.
By the way, I hate beeping microwaves. Our stupid washer and dryer sings to me. I don't like it.
I know.
Just be quiet. I hate the beep. I mean,
agreed.
Yeah, but so the coffee was part of your journey from childhood on.
Yeah.
And I suspect there's some comfort and some experience of home attached to that whole experience.
Absolutely.
Even though your teenage self may have thought, my parents are weird, they do weird coffee, but...
Well, and now we use the toddy system in all of our cafes. Both cafes, our baristas are grinding 12 ounces of beans and pouring them into the plastic pitchers and dripping them. and the quality is great.
That is fantastic. So speaking of coffee... I had dinner at Aragosa last night.
Yes. Fantastic.
So incredible. Devin is amazing. But her staff, I mean, as much as I enjoyed the food, which was like, it's a storybook meal. I don't know how to explain it other than that. I mean, you read a fairy tale and there's a storybook happy ending. That's what the dinner's like. But then everywhere right now in the United States, short-staffed and particularly in Portland, Oregon, service people have always been surly and unhelpful. But that's just kind of the legend that's probably true, which I don't care. Fine. But the staff was helpful and great and thoughtful and interesting. As people you just wanted to sit down and have a cup of coffee with.
Yeah.
But then when they brought out your coffee, and I'm like, oh, what's this? 44 North. I'm like, oh, yes. All right. And it was so perfect. And then I had a cup this morning with my pastries. That was a lot of fun. And, I love pastries, near and dear to my heart. They're fantastic. And so there's some local businesses around here that you support in different times, throughout different times of the year.
Yeah.
So Milkweed is the name.
Milkweed and Monarch. Yes.
Those are two different baking companies that make yummy things that we can buy and eat at 44 North.
Yeah. So Milkweed and Monarch is right down the road from us. They don't have a public facing retail space.
Is that one business or two?
One.
Okay, Milkweed and Monarch.
Yes.
Okay, somehow in my head I got it. There's Milkweed one and a Monarch one, but it's Milkweed and Monarch.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So they do cool stuff.
They do amazing pastries, often galettes, hand pies, turnovers. Then the other baker is Tinder Hearth, who's over in Brooksville, Maine, which actually is a baker that's been around. They started their business, I think, 13 years ago.
And they show up a lot in your Instagram story, I've noticed.
Yes.
Oh.
My business partner Megan grew up with the owners of Tinder Hearth, and so we consider ourselves like sister businesses.
And then Stonington Baking Company. Which is run by Margie Littman, and Margie has a wealth of baking history. She is our Stonington baker only primarily, but makes this very famous item called the Dirt Bomb, which is a muffin essentially rolled in cinnamon, sugar, and cardamom. And we have people write in all winter long asking about when the Dirt Bombs are, how could they find them, when they'll be back. Very famous. I'm sorry you didn't get to have one. I did not know about such a thing.
I know. You would enjoy it.
Wow. So there is a coffee roaster in Bozeman, Montana, and they do a pastry called the Bee's Knees that has got cream and it's honey, and it's just incredible. And I wrote an article just about that. I think I need to get the Dirt Bomb. Can I get it at Stonington?
Sadly, Margie has left early for the season, but next year you can.
Okay, I've got to have a quest for the Dirt Bomb. I love cardamom.
You will love this pastry.
Oh my God, we got to have her write a cookbook
so
we can get the recipe. That would be phenomenal. So I love that you celebrate these local businesses. I love pastries, and you're helping the local economy, and you're feeding our bellies, which is fantastic. And then my friend Kevin's with me on this trip, and it's so great to have a camera person and he's an incredible photographer. He's taking way better photos than me, which kind of irritates me, but it's like you just have a gift. I mean, I think I have a really good eye for photography, and I do. I love my photos, but his are like 10 times better. So this morning I said, I just need some drip coffee, drip coffee, cream and sugar, out. So he looks at the menu, very thoughtful. He's very thoughtful, and he gets the Royal Tar.
Yeah.
So then he takes a sip, and I go, how is it? He goes, it's amazing. He says, but I know why they call it tar. He said, it is thick and rich, and he loved it. But that name comes from that's a style of coffee, a roast that you have that you market, the Royal Tar.
A blend, yep.
A blend, yep. That's incredible. But where's that come from? Because there's a cool story behind that. Maybe a tragic story, but an interesting story.
So the Royal Tar is, it was a circus ship that was traveling between Portland, Maine and New Brunswick.
So, no, time out. When I first heard the circus ship, I didn't process it's a ship with a circus on it.
Yes.
Which means circus animals.
Full menagerie.
And it's going from where to where?
Portland, Maine to New Brunswick, Canada.
So it's going up north.
Yes.
Basically.
And this is 1836. So I imagine there's also some freight, probably passengers traveling. A menagerie of performers and animals. This was a steamer ship, so I'm assuming fueled by coal. And I don't know what part of the year it was. I want to say the fall, but it caught fire. As it was traveling back from New Brunswick to Portland, it was coming through the Deer Isle Thoroughfare, headed towards Vinyl Haven. and essentially began to slowly burn.
And just off the coast of where we're at now.
Yes. Yep. Just minutes down the road and then not far out into the ocean. So there's a lot of myths and legends about the royal tar ship. Some people say that the animals all survived. They swam to islands and there was exotic snakes. There was the tiger who swam to Vinyl Haven, who happened to walk up through a path as a woman was hanging her laundry, and was witnessed and then later on recorded in a letter to the Historical Society. There was the elephant, who supposedly swam to an island called Brimstone. We love this story. I don't exactly know how it ended. It sounds like it could have been very tragic or very mysteriously happy. So we wanted to name our darkest coffee blend the Royal Tar.
I think that's fantastic because I love the fact that it could have a tremendously happy ending or a tragic ending, and it's either way because that's kind of how life is. Yeah. Life has the highs and lows. And then there's also, I didn't do this to my kids, but some people do. Hey, your bunny didn't die. Your bunny went to live in a farm, right? You've kind of heard those. There's a lot of different variations on it. I didn't flush your goldfish down. Your goldfish went, to the goldfish, whatever. So there's a children's book about this circus ship where magically all the animals escape and live happily ever after on these islands.
Yeah, they have a whole new third and fourth lives.
Yeah, they didn't burn to death on a burning ship off the coast of Stonington.
No. Chris Van Dusen did a wonderful job with the book called The Circus Ship, and it's a great gift to give kids.
So I want to add to the myth. When I tell people the story, I'm just going to bald-faced lie and tell them about this story and say, yeah, the elephant ended up on Brimstone Island and lived its whole life there and loved it. The tiger actually escaped and was in the wilds of Maine. And then I'm going to add that there was actually a troop of monkeys that got to Bard Island just off of Aragosa, and they lived there in caves, and there was actually some undiscovered fruit trees on Bard Island they lived in. I'm just going to make it up, and people won't know that I'm just making stuff up.
That's right. That's right.
But I absolutely love that our darkest coffee.
Yeah. And I think it is a beautiful melange of beans. It's a bean from the Sidamo Cooperative in Ethiopia, the Pangoa Cooperative in Peru, and the Comsa Cooperative in Honduras. So those are the three beans. Yeah,
I love wine. Yeah, I'm a cross drinker. I drink everything. But one of the fun things about wine, if you really want to know, I got this from someone else, but now I just stole it as mine. Oh. But if you really know how good a winemaker is, try their blended wine. Because that's where you really get and the same thing with a coffee roasting blend. I think that's where you really get the roaster's talents because they pick these blends and put it together.
That's right.
And a good blend is amazing.
It's kind of like you want to have like the base notes match like the high pitch squeal. I don't know. It's like there's some fusions that work and some that don't. And so it's all about trial and error.
Yeah. So we got on your to-do list when you come to Deer Isle, Maine is the Dirt Bomb.
Yes.
And even if it's dead of winter, at least you can get your black tar.
Absolutely. The Royal Tar.
Royal Tar. Excuse me, Royal Tar.
We will have that bean and blend year round. We wanted to make it like a statement of the business.
And it'll keep you warm in the dead of winter.
That's right.
Yeah, but there's no wrong time to drink coffee. I drink coffee all year long.
Some people drink cold coffee all year long.
Yeah, I can't do. I like hot coffee. I'm old school. I like. And then the obnoxious thing that you don't know about me is that I have way too many coffee mugs.
Ooh, how many?
Under my desk, I have 2 shelves under my desk that I pull out a different one for that day.
Yep.
There is 40.
Wow.
But then there's more other places because I have a whole Christmas set I bring out for Christmas time.
That's fantastic.
I love coffee mugs. And it was so irritating to me to see a beautiful 44 North coffee mug. It's like, I haven't bought it yet, but I probably will.
We're going to have to send you home.
But I want a mug that says, Maine. Like I have a Montana mug that I love that's beautiful. I'm looking for the Maine mug. But then I saw the 44 North and went, that is a beautiful coffee mug. Oh my goodness.
We'll make it happen.
My wife will be so happy.
Yes. Now you have 41.
She just shakes her head. So I'm eclectic, I think that's better than being neurotic. I'm sure of it.
I agree.
I'm sure of it.
I agree.
it has been a delight to have you on the podcast. I love your story. I love what you're putting together. Thank you so much, Melissa, for telling us your story. I can't wait next time I come, sit down with Megan, and get her side of the story and her journey, because there'll be overlaps and differences. But I wish you all the success in the world. And I think between now and Wednesday when I leave, I'm going to have a lot more 44 North coffee. So
Thanks so much, Stephen.
all right, cheers.